June 17th of 2020. When was that? What was it? What special happened? It was Friday, not much. All right. So what else has happened on this date in history? June 17th.
Immaculation Proclamation.
I'm not sure what that person said. I think it was Vince, but it was garbled. So June 17th of 1994, there's a whole documentary on 30 for 30 on this subject. There was the New York Rangers won. The Knicks played Houston. This was when Michael Jordan was on hiatus in the NBA. And what's that white thing in the middle?
OJ.
Simpson.
That's OJ Simpson. June 17th, 1994. What else happened on June 17th? 1972. Anybody? God, the American education system is really functioning on all cylinders. So this is the Watergate Hotel. Does anyone now know what happened on June 17th, 1972?
Watergate
break-in.
Yep. The people who came out behind it were the plumbers. This is the president. These are all the president's men. Robert Redford is in the movie, which my wife tells me constantly, God, he's good looking. So that is all the president's men. This is the thing. So what I want to talk about is the difference between news and noise. Right now, we are in this weird cycle where there's all this noise. I would argue there's not a lot of news. Does anyone know what that scene is? That's when Forrest Gump discovers the break-in at the Watergate. Exactly. If you're me, you know that I was going to pull a movie. That is President Nixon resigning. That was the day he left office. Between the break-in and the resignation, there were 783 days. For those of you that have not picked up on this, I'm kind of gone down a wormhole on Watergate. I've read, I'm on my fourth book. I've watched a whole documentary series. I watched a couple of movies. I'm kind of into it. The Washington Post and New York Times were basically the two newspapers that report on the subject. So the Wall Street Journal, they wrote thousands of articles combined. The Senate Watergate hearings happened. Hours and hours of TV news coverage. There was 3 channels back then. They had basically 2/3 of the country watched this. There was 18,792 hours between the break-in and the resignation. Let's look at a couple of pop culture examples. The NBA Finals just happened. Most of it is noise. When the Wall Street Journal sends my phone an alert, it's news. Somebody won. Let's look at this. Pick what side of the equation you're on. There's Fox, there's CNN, just so no one's left out. There's Al Jazeera. Most of it is noise. There is some news. I'm not picking sides here, but if you look at it from that perspective, there's a lot of noise. What is the actual news? There's hours and hours and hours of noise. So let's think about our world, our life, things we control. Inflation, mortgage rates. Don't you remember the greater days when the economy was awesome when Reagan was in office? By design, the Fed might be tightening too much. There's Jerome Powell. There's, some other news source. Here's Jerome Powell again. Tons and tons and tons and tons of noise. So know the difference between noise and news. I've talked about this more than once. I have an alcoholic friend. I have more than one of them, but one of my buddies who really has it in control talks about control the controllables. He's been sober for 20 something years. And that's what he does every day is he controls the controllables. There's noise out there that are not things inside of your control. Pick the things you can control and control them. And let's look at this. Because what we talked about in the last couple of weeks, you guys understand the economic cycles incredibly well. Better than maybe you did a few days ago, and hopefully better than before you worked here. You understand that we have been focusing on no school today, if you can't tell. This is something that I've been preparing for decades, reading, educating myself, being ready for it, making strategic moves with the business, being properly positioned and prepared. We talked about this over and over again. This is stuff that I think about constantly. Here are the factors, which is what we talked about. Increase in unsold inventory, global unrest, loan mix, affordability, blah, blah, blah. Same stuff. Here are the takeaways. Control what you can control. Know the difference between news and noise. Add value. And when I say add value in all facets. Add value here at the company. Add value to a customer's life. Add value in any way humanly possible. And if we do those things, 2 things will happen. We're going to be fine, number 1. And number 2, we're going to thrive. And that's not just us as a business or me as a person or you as a person, that's us as a collective. So that's what I wanted to say. You're not going to hear from me for a few weeks. I wanted to kind of get that out there. So thoughts, questions, concerns, anything.
What's your fascination with Watergate?
I don't know. I'm kind of fascinated by it. My dad is like the most non-political person in the world, and he was from Massachusetts, and Massachusetts voted for McGovern, and everybody else voted for Nixon. And it was like 49-1. And my dad my dad told me about a bumper sticker that said, "Massachusetts, we told you so." Like it was it was a story that my dad told me when I was a little kid. And I always thought it was interesting. I'm drawn to greatness. I just am. Like, I love Michael Jordan. I like the Lakers, even though I grew up a Celtic fan. Like, I love things that are great. I think Bob Woodward is great. I think he's like literally one of the best investigative journalists that's ever existed. And I don't know how many of his books I've read, a dozen. I just think he's incredible at his craft. And I've just gotten into it because it's fascinating. And it also comes down to like, what do you believe and what do you allow people to help you perceive? I don't know. It's a really interesting thing. So I've gotten interested in it.
What's fascinating about that is that in today's world, an event like that may not even register in the news cycle like it did back then. Just so much has changed, and there is so much noise out there. If something like that happens, it's like, how do you maintain your focus on it long enough to, to really, not care, but think about what happened. Back in those days, it came out in the newspaper. The whole world watched it. It's on TV, newspaper. It's a big event, but times have changed.
Yeah, I was telling Frank that I thought it was kind of cool and like full circle moment with, we did a lot of calls on the economy and kind of what we're preparing for. And this weekend, my mom was asking me a bunch of questions. So it's kind of cool to have like a full conversation with my mom about, a possible recession, inflation, and kind of what that looks like in our business.
I was at my friend's wedding this weekend, and her new mother-in-law has been a realtor here in the Richmond area for probably 30 years. And we spent an hour just talking shop at the rehearsal dinner. She was really interested to see what our takes, what our opinions, kind of were on what everything is. And I don't know. It's really cool to see kind of the other half too, also being like, hey, what should I anticipate help?
I want to latch on to that for a second. I've shut my video off because now I have to get to the airport. We have a CG event, starts tomorrow, and one of Eddie and Grayson will be there. Eddie's been to a couple. This will be Grayson's first. But the reason I bring it up is this. Nobody knows what's going to happen. Like, nobody knows. But if you can be slightly ahead or informed or get to a point where nothing surprises you too much, like you're kind of around it. It allows for you to have less bumpiness in your life and to kind of be prepared. And that's the hope and goal that I think we want here, is just be enlightened. Now, if you've ever read a book called The Black Swan by Nassim Taleb, he talks about how the most educated people can be the most shocked. There's no way to be prepared for everything. But I think if you have some understanding of it and you can synthesize it quickly, you can become an expert. And what I hope we have is more stability than the people who we serve. And that's the goal, is to stay on this side of the curve where we have the information and we become the experts. And I was talking CG. Our goal this week with CG is to have everyone leave feeling empowered. Not right, not wrong, not encouraged, just empowered. Here's where we are. This is what's happening. And these are the things you should synthesize and think about and consider. And if you have that, I think it makes for less bumpiness.
And doing the same thing for the people that we're working with, the homeowners and everybody, just helping them get through the noise. They watch the same news that we do. They got social media and they're not even in this industry. It can be terrifying for them or confusing in a lot of ways. But to your point, if we can help them just with the news, let them know what's going on, but get them through the noise, then we'll be more successful in helping them.
And I would argue with 20 under contract and the number of appointments that I just showed you in Salesforce, we're doing it. Keep doing it. Keep doing the same stuff. That's what we need to do. And we need to stay informed. And there's people who feel different pressures than us as people and as businesses. So we need to be ready to take what the market gives us.